How's everybody doing today? I'll tell you what, I don't know if you guys saw it, there's a giant bus behind me. Jorgensen-Cohen bus. This is huge for us. I'm excited. Just so you know who I am, I'm the chair of the Libertarian Party of Iowa, Chairman Mike. We have a lot of exciting stuff happening in just about 5 minutes. So let's get ready. In about 5 minutes, we're going to get things rolling. So come on out, check out the booths. You still have a little bit of time to go over there, check out the swag, and we're going to get things rolling here in Iowa. So talk to you guys here in just a little bit.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you, Des Moines, for coming out. This is fantastic. We got a lot of great speakers coming up. We have a couple of them all lined up over there. Man of the Hour, Spike, will be coming out here in just a few as well. But first things first, I'm going to do it, and I want every one of you to do it as well. Hashtag Vote Gold, hashtag Spike in DM. Get those posts out there. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Everybody do it right now. Get those phones out. I see you're crossing your hands. Everybody get your phones out. This is not a show of force. I'm not forcing you. This is not a violation of the NAP. This is a very, very hopeful that you guys will promote this, because this is huge for the state of Iowa. This is huge for liberty. And this is huge for the United States. First of all, first one coming up here, many of you see him. He's been out pressing the flesh. He has, probably at least a couple thousand business cards that he loves handing out. He's running for U.S. Senate right here in Iowa. He's going to be taking on the establishment as a Libertarian Senate candidate in Iowa. He's fantastic. From up in Cedar Rapids, welcome to the stage, Rick Stewart.
Hello, Iowa freedom lovers. Are you ready for a libertarian foreign policy?
Yeah!
Are you ready for a libertarian economic policy?
Yeah!
Are you ready for libertarian social policies?
Yeah!
Are you ready to win elections in November?
Yeah!
Well, my name is Rick Stewart, and I am Iowa's Libertarian candidate for the United States Senate. I am very excited to be here to support the Libertarian presidential ticket of Dr. Joe and our guest today, the incredible Spike Cohen, the only millennial that will be on our ballots in November. I've been lucky enough to hear Spike talk previously, and I have also heard his competitor, Kamala Harris, talk. And let me tell you, they both give top-notch, get you out of your seats yelling speeches. But there is a huge difference between the two candidates. Kamala represents the tired, the old two-party system in America, and her speeches glorify the duopoly that has given us only more war, higher taxes, less personal freedom, and less privacy to simply live our lives in peace and prosperity. Spike, on the other hand, he represents the future. A future of minimum government and maximum freedom. A future of an economy so strong, even the people at the bottom of the ladder will be standing tall and proud on the middle rungs. A future of mutual aid based on the voluntary actions of good neighbors and good citizens. Spike and I are both anti-war. We're anti-foreign war. We're anti-drug war. And we're anti-tariff wars. We don't like war. We're against the federal government stealing your tax money to waste on giant boondoggles. We're against civil asset forfeiture. That's where the cops and their dirty political friends literally steal your stuff. Most importantly, we are both pro-liberty and pro-freedom. This is the vision we bring to our campaigns. And everybody in Iowa and to everybody in the entire nation. To win this election, Spike and I need your help. We need your time, and we need your money. Elections are won when every single supporter donates their best efforts voluntarily and digs deep into their own pockets voluntarily. I ask each one of you to step forward and donate your time and your treasure. I ask each one of you to pledge to help bring liberty and freedom to America this year, not next century. I ask each of you to donate generously to my Senate campaign, to the Libertarian Party of Iowa, and to the Libertarian presidential campaign. We can and we will win when every Iowa voter makes the right choice in November. It's this simple. Either you vote to support the rock-solid libertarian principles we see reflected in the American Constitution, or you vote to support the crazy, authoritarian, anti-democratic practices we see in the shipwrecks of the Republican and the Democratic parties, the parties of shame. Please join me on the Iowa Libertarian team, and let's win in November. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Let's give it up for Rick one more time. Rick Stewart, running for U.S. Senate. The next person we have coming up here is someone very close to me. She's from right here in Des Moines. She is running a heads-up race against a Democrat, and she is devoted to winning. You rarely ever see her any place but out on the streets, working with the people, trying to get people excited. And that's what libertarianism is all about, is being out there with the people, because we the people can't do it. They can't do it. We the people are the only ones that can. Toya Johnson is running for Iowa Senate, District 16, and it is my pleasure to bring her up right now. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for Toya Johnson.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. We really appreciate you coming out and showing your support. My name is Toya Johnson. I've lived in Des Moines all my life, and for a very long time, I was a Democrat. Until 2012, I encountered the Libertarian Party and haven't looked back since. The Libertarian Party is the party that I believe aligns most well with my missions and my goals in life. One of my life's work has been criminal justice reform. We've worked on it from the family law perspective. However, in order to affect a larger amount of people, we believe definitely that it needs to happen on a larger scale. So, I am definitely asking you to support liberty, justice, and freedom. My campaign says Iowa needs Toya. That's tax solutions, outreach, youth initiatives, advocacy, and action. I believe that each one of those components is a step towards self-sufficiency, building foundations, and bringing back liberty. This state's motto is, our liberties we prize, our rights we shall maintain. But who's doing that? The current representative in my district doesn't come to meetings. He doesn't come to any of the events that we've had. He's not even listening to the constituents in his district. So we want to support people who are living in our district. We want to support people who are making sure to fight for liberty and justice. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for being advocates for liberty and justice. And make sure that you're going to post at toyaforiowa.com, toyaforiowa.org, Facebook, Toya for Iowa. Thank you once again. Have a great day.
Thank you, Toya. Once again, let's give it up for Toya Johnson, everybody. Toya for Iowa. while we're talking about everything, once again, I'm going to ask you out there and hashtag everything, because this is a big deal. We are working very hard in the state of Iowa to be able to get these candidates the support they need. The Libertarian Party of Iowa, we have a booth over there. We have a goal, and that goal is to bring liberty and principles back to this state. And this gentleman that's about to come up here has been living those principles all his life. You've probably seen him plenty of times. He's a cat in a hat is what I like to call him. He's a tall one though. Even I'm tall and I look up to him. But Brian Jack Holder is running for District 3 U.S. House. I want you all to give him a great warm welcome. Big round of applause. Brian Jack Holder.
Thank you so much, Chairman Mike. I want to thank the Jorgensen-Cohen campaign for having this rally here today and giving us an opportunity to gather and an opportunity for us to speak with you here today. So, my name's Brian Jack Holder. I'm from Council Bluffs, Iowa. I've lived in Iowa my entire life. This is the 4th time that I've run for this congressional district. This is the 3rd time as a Libertarian, and it's just been so wonderful. I joined the party 4 years ago. I've met so many wonderful, quality people in the Liberty movement, and what we do, we get together and we advocate for things that you don't hear the two-party candidates advocating for. So it would be wonderful if we can get more of us to run for public office, because just as an average voter, you know, you just have one vote. But if you can run as a candidate for public office, and if you can run as a Libertarian, you can spread the message of liberty. And, you know, I was accused 2 years ago of spoiling the election. Well, I don't think you can spoil an election that's already been rigged. I'm going to read a short quote here from one of my favorite Supreme Court justices, Justice Louis Brandeis, one of the most libertarian-minded Supreme Court justices. He's mostly remembered as a progressive, but he had some wonderful, beautiful words about liberty of speech. And this is from a case from 1927, and he says, "Those who won our independence believed that the final end of the state was to make men free to develop their faculties, and that in its government, the deliberative forces should prevail over the arbitrary. They valued liberty both as an end and as a means. They believed liberty to be the secret of happiness, and courage to be the secret of liberty. They believed that freedom to think as you will and to speak as you think are means indispensable to the discovery and spread of political truth. That without free speech and assembly, discussion would be futile. That with them, discussion affords ordinarily adequate protection against the dissemination of noxious doctrine. That the greatest menace to freedom is an inert people. That public discussion is a political duty. And that this should be a fundamental principle of the American government. As a Libertarian, this is a fundamental principle of our party. Join our party. You know, send some money to the Libertarian Party of Iowa. Please donate to the Jorgensen-Cohen campaign. And thank you so much for coming out here today.
Once again, Brian Jack Holder, everybody. You know, I earned that moniker Chairman Mike at our convention last February, and I made it a point to live that moniker because I love the party. I do everything I can to try to get that party going, try to promote LPIA, and not just LPIA, everything that we live for. That may be fundraising is helping our neighbors. Because guess what? The government don't do it. Why should the government do it when we can do it? Let us take control. And this next person, I know she has some strong feelings. I know she has some strong language sometimes, but I think she's toning it down today. I want to go ahead and welcome to the stage, Jules Offenbach.
Hi, thank you all for coming. I'm an immigrant from Russia, and there are some people who frequently say that I'm a little too sensitive to the abuse of power by the government. But today I want to talk about disasters. Does everyone know what a disaster is? I think we can all agree that Cedar Rapids recently experienced a natural disaster. My friend Myra, who is running for House District 70, is a lifelong resident of Cedar Rapids, and she tells me this: almost every house is at least partially destroyed. Children and their parents are sleeping outside in tents because their houses are uninhabitable. People were without electricity for 7 to 10 days. People were using generators for power, but couldn't restart them because there was no electricity and gas stations were not working. Garbage has not been picked up for about 2 weeks, and the food was rotting in the garages and on the streets. The beauty of that disaster, however, was that neighbors started helping each other. Everybody pulled out their chainsaws and was helping their neighbors clean out the debris. People from Wisconsin and from all over the country came to Cedar Rapids to help. The linemen from all over the Midwest and Canada came to Cedar Rapids to help restore the power. And every person in the community stood together and showed the government how it's done. And that is exactly what the Libertarian Party stands for. We advocate to be a good neighbor. We believe in humanity. But the disaster doesn't stop there. Our government steals our money on a regular basis, claiming that they will help us when we need them. Where was the mayor of Cedar Rapids? Where was the city manager? Where were the city councilmen? Why did it take more than 3 days for Iowa National Guard to show up to Cedar Rapids? Why did they wait for 2 more days for orders to go and do something? And where was our governor during those 3 days? Why did it take her to come to Cedar Rapids 3 days? Why was she not helping fellow Iowans? What about her lieutenant governor? Does Mr. Gregg not know how to use a chainsaw? I sure hope that our governor lost every single vote in Cedar Rapids as a result of this natural disaster. What about our president? President Trump came to Cedar Rapids 7 days after the disaster. He flew into the airport, had a 30-minute meeting in the airport, and never left the airport. He just left the Cedar Rapids. The real disaster is our failed government. And that is one disaster we can correct. We must correct. And correct we shall. This November, next November, and every November after that. Vote Libertarian. We are the only party who encourage you to do what you are already doing, helping each other, being good neighbors. And we are the only party who doesn't want to steal your money. Vote Libertarian. Vote Gold. Thank you.
Once again, let's give it up for Jules. You know, you've heard it quite a few times today, and I am very passionate about our state motto. Our liberties we prize,
Our rights we will maintain.
and our rights we will maintain. You know what? I think those people up on Capitol Hill completely forgot about that, because they, as Mr. Brian Jack Holder loves to say, our tyranny we prize and our power we maintain. And that's not right, because we, the people, are who they work for. We, the people, have the power. Or you know what? I believe we have somebody here that loves to say, you have the power. And with that, I want to welcome, it is my great pleasure to welcome to the state of Iowa, my friend, our next Vice President of the United States of America, Mr. Spike Cohen.
I'll be buried in my grave. Thank you so much. Thank you to the people of Iowa for coming here. Thank you for the people of Des Moines and for those who came from all over. Before we get started, I'd just like to thank the Libertarian Party of Iowa, the Polk County Libertarian Party, Chairman Mike, Rick, Brian, Jules, Toya, everyone that spoke. And I'd like to thank you all for coming out. Give yourselves a round of applause for coming out. I greatly, greatly appreciate your time and for your consideration. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Folks, I don't have to tell you why we're here. We're here because things are getting increasingly worse under Republican control. The Republicans and Democrats have had exclusive control of every lever of power of government for over 160 years. And look at what we've got. And that's why Joe and I are running. Joe and I are running to give you the power back, to give you your wealth back, to give you your freedom back that they have slowly taken from you over the past several decades and put it back in your hands where it's always belongs so that you can thrive in ways that aren't even possible right now. Who here is sick and tired of their loved ones going off to fight and kill and die in foreign countries for the benefit of foreign dictators and well-heeled, politically connected military contractors and then brought back here and subjected to the worst form of healthcare in this country, the VA? Who is sick of that? I know I am. Who here is sick of these lockdowns that are happening because the federal government stopped medical professionals for testing COVID patients for the first 2 months that the epidemic was here? Who's sick of that? I know that I am. Who here is sick of seeing their loved ones and their communities destroyed by the war on drugs and people being sent to prisons and being given permanent felony records for owning plants and for having addictions instead of having it treated like a health issue? I know that I am. Who here is sick and tired of watching the cost of living go completely out of control because of the Federal Reserve and other disastrous economic policies and debt spending? I know that I am. Who here is sick and tired of watching entire industries flee, not just these communities like Des Moines and Iowa, but the entire country and going overseas because of disastrous economic policies from Republicans and Democrats? I'm sick of it! Yeah! I know that I am. And folks, let's be clear. These things weren't accidental. They weren't bad ideas with good intentions. These were intentional. The Republicans did these things intentionally because they want you to be desperate. They want you to be anxious. They want you to be impoverished. They want you to be reliant on them, and they want you to be hopeless. Because if you're hopeless, it's easier for them to convince you to simply let them control your lives in exchange for safety and peace and health. Joe Jorgensen and I recognize that that's not the best way for us to be able to live our lives. The best way for us to live our lives is to remove those barriers and burdens that the Republicans have put in place, put the power back in your hands, and allow you to reclaim your lives and your families and your neighborhoods. Let's talk for a moment about our opponents. First, we have Joe Biden. Joe Biden, it's okay to boo that. We have Joe.
Sexual predator!
Yeah. We have Joe Biden. Name a bad policy from the last 50 plus years. And Joe Biden either helped co-write it, or sponsor it, or sign it into law, or stood right by the president in the White House while it was enforced. Joe Biden is the architect of every bad policy to come out of DC for the past 50 plus years when he isn't busy sniffing children and trying to force women to kiss him on front of cameras. Now let's talk about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, this very stable genius, has managed to run up more debt in 3.5 years than any other president before him was able to run up in 2 terms. Barack Obama used to have that record for the most amount of debt that he's run up, and it took him 8 years. Trump blew through that in 3.5 years. Donald Trump spent almost as much money as any other president in 3.5 years. This lifelong crony who has used the government to harm those around him for his direct profit, who then said that he was going to drain the swamp, only to become the king of the swamp creatures. Donald Trump, who said that he would protect your right to keep and bear arms, and has introduced more regulations and more executive orders to infringe upon your right to keep and bear arms than the last 4 presidents before him combined. You said it, not me. These are the options that the Republicrats have given you. And they tell you that you have to pick one or the other, and you have to decide which one is the lesser evil. Well, folks, I'm sick of choosing lesser evils. I'm here to give you an option that isn't evil. Our option is Joe Jorgensen. Joe Jorgensen is a brilliant, self-made entrepreneur. Joe Jorgensen is ready to lead from day one, not by taking control of your life, but by putting it back in your hands and allowing you as free Americans to live and prosper and thrive in ways that often aren't even possible right now. If you want an end to the wars, if you want an end to the war on drugs, if you want an end to the war on guns, if you want to end the Federal Reserve, if you want to end the IRS, if you want to end police brutality, if you want to end the school to prison pipeline, if you want to end the violations of our rights that happen every single day, then Joe Jorgensen and every other libertarian running up and down the ballot in this state and all other 50 states plus DC, we are the people to vote for. Now, folks, in a little bit, I'm going to do a Q&A because I prefer to spend my time answering your questions. I haven't said anything up here that you probably haven't heard before, hopefully, and we're going to be doing a Q&A. But before we start with that, I just want to make an appeal. Joe and I are fighting to create a grassroots army for human liberty, fighting to set this country free, and we need your help. If you haven't already, I ask you to go to lp.org and join the Libertarian Party. And then I ask you to find one of these fine folks that have helped organize this event and find out how you can join, if you haven't already, how to join our state, your state and local affiliates and get involved at the grassroots level, because that's where the victories happen. Not just in the White House, but all the way up and down the ballot. That is how minds are changed. That is how hearts and minds are won for the message of liberty. And then I ask you to go to joe20.com. That's jo20.com. And we have a volunteer form, and we'd love to have you fill it out. And if you're able to make a contribution, we would greatly appreciate it. I'm not here to tell you to give more than you can, to tell you to give till it hurts or anything else. I'm telling you that the Republicans and Democrats don't have to ask you for money. They do ask you for money, but they don't have to ask you for it. Because not only do they get automatic ballot access, they get to rob you in taxes to help pay for their campaigns. They get matching campaign funding. And what that means is you get robbed to pay for them to campaign, because they don't just believe that they're entitled to your vote. They believe they're entitled to your money to run their campaigns. Joe and I don't believe that. The Libertarian Party doesn't believe that. We don't believe that we should be able to just take your money. We believe that before we can get any money or any help from you, that we need to earn your support with our ideas and our appeal. And so if today, if what I have said and what these other great speakers have said have compelled you to believe that we have earned your support, then I would appreciate any contribution you are able to make. It allows us to do these bus tours. It allows us to do viral social media marketing. It allows us to get around the traps that the Republicrats and their crony corporate media have set to try to block out the message of liberty. So we will be starting this Q&A, but I want to end on this. You are the grassroots army for human liberty. You are the power. You are fighting for a world set free in our time. And our time is now. Thank you. So folks, we're going to have Q&A here, and if everyone would line up and go to this fine gentleman here. Thank you. To ask your questions. We're going to take the first few, but I'm going to be here for a while. So if we don't get a chance to answer your question here, I will be going around the crowd. I'd be happy to talk to everyone here and answer any questions that you have. I will take the first question here. Oh, we're going to go over here? Okay. Go ahead. Hi, how are you?
Doing good. My name's RJ.
RJ?
First and foremost, I'd like to thank you for coming out.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I have a question for you. Being that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have both took advantage of the African American vote, and there is a third option, I would like to know, when is the Libertarian Party going to come into the urban communities to educate people about liberty and freedom? Because in my neighborhood, I've never seen a Libertarian.
That's next.
I like you guys' concepts, and you guys have a lot of good stuff that you guys are offering. So I just want to know when you guys are going to come and do some outreach in the urban communities?
Absolutely, and I appreciate you asking that. So my running mate Joe is actually in Atlanta right now doing exactly that. I myself, I've done door knocking tours and housing projects and in other urban communities. I've talked to communities of all different income levels, all different races and creeds and colors. I've talked to people across, everyday Americans across the spectrum of the political beliefs and everything else. But I think you're right. I think that the Libertarian Party, we recognize that government, when it does anything other than just protect the lives and rights and property of the people, when it tries to get involved in our day-to-day lives, it acts as an agent, largely an agent of harm. And it is incumbent upon us as libertarians to reach out to the communities that are the most acutely affected by the abuses and excesses of the state to make it clear that the Libertarian Party speaks on their behalf and would love to have you join us in fighting for human liberty. I have gone to Black Lives Matter protests. I have gone and spoken with Black Panthers. I have gone to housing projects. I've gone to urban communities. And I've also gone to suburban communities. And I've also gone to gun rights protests and rallies. And I've spoken with lockdown protesters. We go where people are, where they recognize that the state is harming them every single day, and we listen to what they have to say, we reflect back that we understand, and then we take them on the journey for how liberty, human liberty, all of us coming together as one to fight against this Leviathan, this monster that the Republicans and Democrats have created is the best way forward for us. So thank you for your question, RJ. I greatly appreciate it. Hi.
Hi, thank you for coming to Des Moines.
Thank you.
My question is, our current 3rd District Congresswoman, Cindy Axne, her campaign sent out a flyer that stated the only way to get ahead is to get a college degree or to go to college. What is your answer to that, please?
I started a web design company when I was 16 and I retired 3 years ago. So that's one example of not needing to have a college degree to get ahead. Now, I will say this. Thank you. I will say this. I'm not disparaging people going to college, but we have been sold a bad bill of goods when it comes to higher education. The federal government stepped in and removed the price equilibrium. Now, for those who don't know what price equilibrium is, here's basically what it is. If I'm selling a product, in this case a college education, and I say my tuition is, let's say, $2,000 per semester. I'm just putting a number out there. And that allows me to get enough people in my seats that I can continue to afford to run my university. But if I charge $3,000, even though I make more money per student, enough students are going to say that's too much, that's too rich for my blood, that I now have fewer students and I'm not making enough money to be able to continue doing it. I have to keep my pricing down to what the market can afford. Unless the federal government steps in and says, you know what, you can charge whatever you want, and we'll just underwrite it in the form of endless loans and endless grants. And oh, by the way, we'll also create a bunch of rules that say that you have to go to school to do things like braid hair or cut hair or do makeup or do aesthetics or do a myriad of other things that shouldn't require any kind of college education. Then not only does that artificially drive up the demand of pricing, but it also eliminates the price equilibrium. So you get rid of that, you get government out of it, and you allow the pricing to go back down to what people can actually afford. And you get government out of the student loan crisis where students who even dropped out and didn't even finish their schooling are now in a situation where they're still having to pay off debts for a college education they didn't even finish. And because it's a federal debt, they can't even get out of it with bankruptcy. We get government out of it so that the decision making goes back in the hands of the students and the educators, and universities can't continue to fleece us. That's how we deal with that. Hi.
Hello, sir.
Hey, Les.
How you doing again?
I'm doing great, man.
I got a question for you.
Sure.
What's the position on this party's in regards to reparations for the descendants of Africans living in America who was victims of slavery?
That's an excellent question. So I would defer to my running mate on the specific question of reparations, but here's what I can say. Before we talk about any kind of repairing, we have to talk about ending the harm. If I'm a doctor and someone comes into my doctor's office and says, Doc, I got this really bad gash, and when I look at the gash, I see that someone is still actively stabbing that person, but I have to end the stabbing before I can ever look at what kind of healing needs to happen. So what we need to do when we look at the problems that African Americans and other marginalized communities are facing right now, The largest problems that they are facing is an overbearing government that is standing over them and enforcing and disproportionately enforcing against them. That's why we have situations where, for example, black people are something like 3 or 4 times more likely to be convicted on a drug or gun charge, even though they're only roughly the same as likely to use or sell drugs as white people, and they're actually only half as likely as white people to own a gun. We know and we see how that disproportionate enforcement ends. And so we end that. The way that we end that is multifold. First of all, we end the war on drugs and we end the war on guns, because it's not a government's business what you own or what you put in your body. The next thing that we do is we end... The next thing that we do is we end qualified immunity. Qualified immunity allows abusive police officers and abusive government officials to harm you in any way they see fit and then not be held liable. Les, imagine if you could go into court and say, Your Honor, I know that I've been accused of murder, but I think what I did was perfectly reasonable. And the judge goes, oh, okay, well then I'll throw the charges out. That's qualified immunity, and that allows police officers to continue to infringe upon your rights. Ending qualified immunity allows them to be held liable and accountable.
But it says that perfect, but at the same time, when you look at the Native Americans, they get reparations. When you look at Jews, they still get reparations. You got the Japanese, you got reparations. Everybody got reparations in a victim of this government but us. We the only ones this day who have not got nothing for everything that has been done to us. And question, Joe Biden's not answering the question.
Yep.
I don't expect Donald Trump to answer the question. But I would like to hear from y'all and straight up for an answer. Would you advocate for reparations for us if we won the White House?
Well, I think that any kind of long-term system of justice has to look at what happened. And so if you look at not just slavery, because that's what everyone focuses on. It didn't end with slavery. And I know I don't have to tell you this, but I'm telling everyone this. It didn't end with slavery. After slavery ended, there was a program called the land giveaways, where the federal government gave away parcels of land to anyone who wanted to come and take it, unless they were black. Then we had the Jim Crow era, where gun control and other laws were passed to make it nearly impossible for black people, freed slaves, to be able to defend themselves against the Klan and corrupt government officials that were working hand in hand in the Klan. Then, after that, the Civil Rights Act passes, but black Americans were herded into housing projects with the promise of jobs, and then all of those jobs were out and pushed out into the suburbs with the FHA, where white families were given subsidized suburban single-family housing, and black families were, by law, not allowed to participate in that. And then you forward into today with the war on drugs and every other enforcement mechanism that has happened. So I think long-term that is definitely a conversation that we need to have. Unfortunately, I'm not at the top of the ticket, and so I have to defer to my candidate on what her position on specifically is with reparations. But I will tell you this, I think long-term, anything that looks at solving a problem has to look at the liability and what happened on a systemic level and look at how to repair that. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, my name is Sylvia.
Sylvia?
So I have a question, and it's one thing, it's a topic that's never talked about.
Okay.
It's a topic that's never touched on. It is a taboo conversation, but it needs to not be taboo. What is your stance on mental health? When I say that is, we have a lot of people out here that are suffering from it, but the resources are being wiped out. What are you going to do for communities that are suffering, you know, and I'm not even just saying African American communities, I'm talking about communities as a whole. What is your stance on that, and how would you fix that with bringing that into a topic? Because candidacies all across the board, across the years, that's a topic nobody ever wants to talk about, but it's a topic that needs to be talked about because it hits so many of your people that you want to reach out to, because people are getting to the point they have no resources to go to.
Right.
So my question is this: what law or what would you change as of right now to where mental health resources would be opened up more to civilians than besides just the vets? Not saying the vets don't deserve it, because they do, but there are civilians that have gone through stuff from childhood all the way up that are suffering from some of the same things that veterans are suffering from, and we are being looked at like we're nobody.
Right.
So how would you handle that if you were to be in the White House? How would you and your running mate handle that situation? And what resources would you be able to put into play? Because on top of that, it's hard for those who cannot even keep a job to even get on disability, because you have to be damn near crippled in order for you to get approved for disability. But a child can get approved just like that. The reason why I say that, and the reason why I'm passionate about it, is because I know I suffer from mental health. My son suffers from it. My son got approved just like that. But me, I got denied 5 times.
Right.
And I have way more disability than my son. So I just want to hear your stance on it. Because like I said, this is a hard conversation that people don't never want to bring up, but it needs to be brought up.
And thank you for bringing it up and bringing this question up. It is something people don't like talking about. Part of the reason it's taboo is because there's a taboo around the subject of mental health. If someone's leg is broken, no one says, oh, there's something wrong with you, your leg is broken. They talk about fixing their leg. If someone has a mental health issue, there's unfortunately a lot of people that feel like they want to say, oh, you're crazy or something like that, instead of addressing the fact that mental health is no different than any other part of our body. And it is a crucially important thing, because we can't thrive if we feel broken inside. Right? So, and I'm sure I don't have to tell you that. It is impossible to thrive if we feel broken inside, and this is something that's near and dear to my heart. Sylvia, something that we have that's going on, not just in the mental health field, but in the entire medical field, but it applies to this as well, is that we have an increasing shortage of providers. And it's happening slowly, so we aren't seeing it happen in an acute way, but it's happening. And the reason that it's happening is because the government is making it harder and harder for someone who wants to be a provider to actually be able to provide to their patients. And so an increasing number of people, when you look at the skyrocketing cost of higher education, including for going to medical school, when you look at the fact that there are an increasing number of barriers and burdens that are put in place that make it harder and harder to be able to maintain a practice, more and more people that are thinking of becoming a doctor, they look at the numbers and they go, I'm never going to be able to pay my loans off. I'm never going to be able to make any real money doing this. I shouldn't even try to do this. And a lot of doctors that are already in the practice who were considering retiring 5 or 10 years from now say, I think I'm just going to retire now. I can't do this for another 5 years. And here's why. When you go into a doctor's office, when you go into a hospital, what do you see? You see a doctor, 2, maybe 3 nurses, and like 15 administrators. To the point where it gets frustrating. You're there, you're trying to get help, and you got yet another person coming up. You think, is this the nurse? No, it's another person that needs your insurance or Medicare or Medicaid information. Another person comes up. Is this my nurse or doctor? No. This is someone else that needs to fill out some other paperwork with you. And someone else comes up. Before you actually see a nurse or a doctor, you've had to speak to 4 or 5 people. That's not because the hospitals or doctors' offices want to do that. It's because of the regulations and requirements that have been put in place by the federal and state government. And not only has that contributed to nearly 75% of the overall cost of healthcare, which means if we reduce those things, then the cost of healthcare would plummet. But it's also the reason why more and more doctors simply can't afford to comply with all of that. They can't afford to have 3 or 4 administrators for every nurse and doctor they have. So they either go out of business, or they go and work for some other massive medical provider. I don't know what the big companies are here, but there's like Cleveland Clinic and Kaiser Permanente, and where I am, it's Atrium, and these massive companies. The reason these companies are growing and more of the doctors you go to aren't just their own practice, but they're part of a bigger practice, is because it's only those major corporations that can afford the cost of all of this compliance. And so the doctors go and work for them. They make a fraction of what they used to make, and they have twice as much of a case workload, and they're more likely to have malpractice issues because they're seeing way more patients than they can even process mentally. And so this creates the crisis that we have, and that bleeds over into healthcare. And as a result of that, the cost of healthcare, of mental health care services continues to skyrocket. The cost of the prescriptions, thanks to ridiculous patent protections on drugs that should cost pennies on the dollar what they do now. All of these things contribute to skyrocketing costs, and as a result of skyrocketing costs, a reduction in access to people who absolutely need it. So what we do is we get rid of those barriers and burdens, and we get those regulations out of it so that the costs go down and the access goes up. So that communities like yours and people like you said, it affects you. It doesn't just affect you in this community. It affects every single person. No person, no race, no creed, no color, no community, no income level, no geographic area. No one is immune from the possibility of dealing with mental illness. So we get rid of those barriers and burdens that are causing the access to be so rationed in the first place and get the cost to come down so that it's something that can actually be provided to you and others on a sustainable way. And we fix the problem at its core. So I hope that answered your question.
Also, how would you protect the providers that are already in the field, that have been working in it for numerous years? The reason why I'm asking that is there's a corporation here where I go for my management for my psych meds.
Okay.
I was just informed 2 weeks ago that the entire office, from administrators to the doctors to the nurse practitioners to the nurses, were all told they were fired. Now I'm stuck. Now I got to figure out where I'm going to go.
Yep.
How would you protect them and their jobs? Because they're already in that. They've chosen that field. They didn't care about all the statistics that you just laid out. So how would you protect them when they're dealing with corporations that you know, I've been with this company that my doctor is with for going on 3.5 years, and now I'm being uprooted and being told that my doctor basically just got an email telling her, kick ass and we don't give a fuck about you or your patients.
Yep.
And I mean, excuse my language, but how would you protect them? How would you protect those that are already in the field, that are being threatened by the previous government, by the previous states laws and national laws? That's where I would say you need to explain that part, because you need to make them feel comfortable. Because some people are willing to take the chance to take the student loans and all of that and pay as they go, but they don't feel that I feel like some people don't do it because they don't feel they have the backing that they need, because they don't know 5 years down the road
if they're going to get fired or and that's so what you're talking about is, I mentioned, and that was my mistake, I mentioned the people who retire early and the people who decide not to get into it, but part of that exact same problem is people that get fired because the corporations that they work for look at the numbers and go, we can't afford to do this anymore, so they just fire everyone. So that's exactly what I was just talking about, is exactly what that leads to. It leads to people quitting, it leads to people being fired, it leads to people never becoming doctors, and now you are facing, I don't have to tell you there's a doctor shortage, you just told me, where are you going to go now? Getting rid of those barriers and burdens, it's not just about the statistics or the numbers. It's about the reality that people who are looking at this say, oh, now I can afford to do business again. Now I don't have to fire this entire division. Now I don't have to retire early. It ends the doctor shortage. It ends the shortage. It not just ends the doctor shortage and the nurse shortage. It also ends the ridiculous cost increases, both for people that are paying out of pocket and for people that are on social services. So what I'm talking about fixes that problem as well. It fixes it by making it where providing services isn't jacked up in price and reduced in supply in the first place. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Hey Spike, my name's Jenny.
Jenny.
And being the token trans person out here, I thought I'd go ahead and address LGBT concerns.
Okay.
The current administration seems to have a war on transgender people, with trying to kick them out of the military and changing the language of some of the things so that their medical benefits are expiring and things like that. His biggest opponent, Biden, wrote a lot of those laws or signed off, as you said earlier in your speech, that any bad law pretty much came from him.
Joe Biden, right?
So when talking to people in my community and trying to convince them to go with the best of the options, which would be Joe Jorgensen, of course, what do you guys offer as far as LGBT, bathroom laws, and medical procedures, hormone replacement therapy, things like that, that are very, very important to us just as for survival.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for that question. Now, Jenny, I probably don't have to tell you, if you're already a libertarian and already telling me that our best choice is Joe Jorgensen, which I agree with you, that the Libertarian Party has been fighting for LGBTQ rights for nearly 50 years now, for the entire time that we've existed. Back when Democrats and Republicans still overwhelmingly thought that homosexuality should be illegal, we were calling for getting government out of marriage and getting government out of people's personal lives. You are who you are, and it's none of anyone's business. It's none of the government's business, it's none of anyone else's business who you are, and no one should be able to infringe upon your right to be who you are. Specifically when it comes to the questions that you were bringing up, one of the things that Jenny's talking about, if you don't know, the Trump administration changed a regulation, an interpretation of a regulation, saying basically that doctors and insurance companies can deny treatment, even if it's deemed medically necessary. They can deny treatment to transgender individuals if they want to. And now, there are some libertarians who go, well, that's freedom of association, but it's not, and here's why. You don't have a choice of whether or not to use insurance. And for that matter, health insurance companies only exist because of the mechanisms of government that created insurance in the first place. We didn't have comprehensive health insurance until FDR messed it up with the wage market and the labor market during World War II to force employers to offer comprehensive health insurance. And all of the cost increases that came as a result of that and led to things like Medicare and Medicaid and Medicare Part D and Obamacare, all of that came from government infringement on the healthcare market. You don't have a choice whether or not to have insurance. And so if you don't have a choice whether or not to have something, that's an extension of government. That organization is an extension of government by virtue of the fact that you are mandated to do business with them. And if you are mandated to do business with someone and they're not required to do business back with you, if you are mandated to give money to a baker, but then they don't have to bake a cake for you, that's a completely different situation than you voluntarily entering into a transaction or not. So we would end that. First of all, we would get government out of it so that we increasingly wouldn't even need health insurance to begin with because the cost plummeted so much and the access increased so much that we can go straight to doctors, know what the pricing is, and be able to work out pricing directly with our providers. But even in the meantime, the idea that you should be required to give your money to an insurance company in order to avoid fines, but then that they can turn around and deny you services that have been deemed medically necessary because you're a small enough group that they think they can get away with it. This isn't because of deeply held convictions or some religious beliefs or anything like that. They're just trying to save money. And that is completely wrong, and it's a violation because you were forced into that arrangement. If they want to force people into that arrangement, then they need to keep up with their end of it. So that's what we think about that. When it comes to bathroom laws and things like that, the government has been absolutely ridiculous with this. Everyone raise your hands who doesn't have a unisex bathroom in your house. That's interesting. So this is an issue that has been created as a result of Republicans and Democrats trying to create a culture war. No one had a problem with you going into a ladies' room until Republican and some Democrat politicians started screaming from the rafters that, trans women, or they would say, men are coming in to violate our women. They created a panic for no reason. And all of that ends because you're just trying to live as who you are. And that's none of anyone's business. And to try to associate you with perverts and pedophiles and victimizers, that was intentional. And I'm sorry they do that. That is something that we would never do. So when you're talking to people in your community, you can let them know that we have been fighting for the rights of LGBT people before I was even alive, and back when Joe was a child. Back when the Democrats and the Republicans were talking about throwing them in cages. Back before shortly after the Stonewall riots, when the popular opinion is that you should be locked in a cage because there's something wrong with you, we were fighting for you. Thank you. I hope that answers your question. And I guess we can take one more, and then I'll go around the crowd and answer any other questions that you have. Hi.
Hello. So I know that getting the federal government out of things, including education, is going to result in better schools, better education for our kids.
Okay.
Sorry, I had this. Now, I appreciate that you're going to be part of the party to get the federal government out of things, where if once that's gone, communities will take over. They will figure out how to educate their children in the best way. However, we're also looking at making you a leader during a time of transition, and a lot of people have forgotten how to do that. And when we try to tell people, my wife's a teacher, when we try to tell people, well, once the federal government gets out of it, things will improve. And most teachers seem to know that the BIE is not helping them, it gets in their way. But then they come around and say, but where's the money going to come from? Who's going to run the schools? And I realized that my faith that it'll happen, it'll work, is not satisfying these people. Now, as a leader in a time of transition, do you have any ideas, or what kind of ideas have you heard? What kind of guidance could you maybe offer to people other than just, hey, we'll back up and let you do it? Some way to kind of help encourage these people that, hey, no, it'll be okay.
It is not a calming statement. Thank you for that question. And I'm sorry, what was your name?
David.
David, thank you for your question. It is not a calming thing for people who are not already libertarians to hear, well, the market will work it out. Because that sounds like we're just going, I don't care, it'll work itself out. And that's not true. What we know what the real answer is. But what I've said when people ask me the question, and that's a legitimate question, where's the money going to come from? The same place it came from now. It's going to come from you. The federal government isn't just taking money out of their own pockets and out of their own goodwill and saying, here, let's make this crappy educational system and we'll pay for it. They're robbing you. They're printing out Federal Reserve notes to lend to themselves and then sticking you with the bill with interest for 40 years. They're the ones doing this. But it's your money. So the answer to that question is, it'll come from you. But instead of you being subjected to some one-size-fits-all, no child left behind, standardized testing plan, where really all they're doing is just massively increasing the number of administrators, surprise, surprise, the bureaucrats and the cronies have created a system that benefits no one but the bureaucrats and the cronies. When we get rid of that, they'll have their money back. When I talk about giving the power back to the people, that's not some abstract term. I'm saying we are giving them their money back. We are giving them their freedom and decision-making ability back. And in doing so, we are giving them their power back to decide what they want, not just their schools to look like, but their police to look like, their first response to look like, their healthcare providers to look like, their communities and lives to look like, because the power and the money is back in their hands. So the short answer, when they ask you, where's the money going to come from, David? It's going to come from you. And instead of coming through the filter of the federal government, who is so bloated and inefficient that most of it gets wasted and the rest gets used for the most malfeasant ways, it's instead going directly into your schools and your school districts and your teachers and your educators and your resources for your children. So I hope that is a better answer than the market will provide or the invisible hand. Don't tell them please don't ever, if you're talking to someone who isn't a libertarian and they ask how something works and you tell them the invisible hand, now we sound like we're in some kind of cult. So please don't say unless you've explained what the invisible hand is, please don't say the invisible hand. But I hope that answers your question. And folks, like I said, thank you so much for coming out. I'm going to be walking around, be happy to take pictures with you, answer any questions you have. You are the power. I am so honored to be speaking with you here today. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you.
Thank you, Spike Cohen. Give it up one more time. Show them some love. Thank you guys for coming out here. Libertarian Party of Iowa, you guys rock. Love the setup here. Thank you guys all for fighting for liberty. If you are not, actually, let's do this. Who is a Libertarian Party member, state or national? Okay, your job is to go over to this side of the crowd and help convince them to sign up for a state party membership over at the booth over here or a national party membership. If you can give to the campaign, please do. You can see that Spike is out here fighting for every single one of you, every single one of your businesses, every single one of your family members. Help us help you, help him help you. Give what you can today. We've got a box up here to take your donations. That helps buy signs. That helps buy radio ads. That helps boost posts on social media. Every $5, $10, $20, every $1,000, every little bit adds up. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Give yourself a round of applause one more time. And Spike will be mingling for a few minutes while we tear down. Thank you all so much for being here.
Imagine a text saying your homie died, an enemy or whatever. I mean, you know the guy.
Hi everybody, I'm John Phillips. I am the regional rep to the National Libertarian Party. So if you are a party member, thank you. If you're not, my email address is john.phillips@lp.org, or my cell phone number is 217-412-5973. If you have any questions about the party that I can answer for you, do not hesitate. Because your membership is how we make things like this happen. Thank you.
Best case scenario, I get to finish it all. Then chill with the gust in August.